I'm Lallai, and this is my African American History Oral History project.
My name is Randall Craig, and I'm going to be discussing the Million More Movement.
Okay, Mr. Craig, could you tell us what is the Million More Movement?
The Million More Movement is a part two movement of the first movement called the Million Man March, which took place in 1995 in Washington, D.C., led by Louis Farrakhan, and the Million More Movement was a 10-year reunion of that in 2005, still in D.C., and it was a group of sermons and events led by various members of the African American community, and they just preached about black empowerment and black upward mobility in the community. And people came from all around the country and met in D.C. for the event.
Could you tell me what kind of things this movement accomplished for African Americans?
It gave African Americans a sense of black empowerment uh, and a bigger masses than probably since the civil rights movement.
Were there any other movements like this that you knew of?
Yeah, the Million Man March, which was 10 years prior to the Million More Movement, it was a march through D.C. There were almost a million people there, and it was essentially the same thing as the Million More Movement, but it was more so revolved around the march rather than the sermons.
Is there anything you can remember about that day or about the march?
I remember that being the first time I had seen so many black people at the same time, like of all ages, young and old, just coming together for the same cause and believing in the same thing.
Why did you want to take part in this movement?
Because I feel like no one else my age around the time was taking advantage of an opportunity like that. I was 15 at the time. I feel like not a lot of people my age were were experiencing things like that, of that magnitude.
How did this movement influence the African American community?
I would say it revived Black Power. The Million Man March revived the whole Black Power movement. That was like it started in the late '60s and '70s and kind of died out in the '80s. And when they did the first Million Man March in the movement in the '90s, that kind of revived the whole Black Power movement and let everybody know that it was still going on. And I think the Million More movement was just to be the 10-year reunion of that to show that it's still in effect.
So this isn't a movement or anything that still takes place like today, right now.
They might be maybe in another 3 years, maybe another 10-year reunion to the last one, but it's not a consecutive yearly thing.
Oh, okay. So, what kind of things did you experience, or what did you learn from going to these events and listening to these very important African Americans?
I learned about other very important African Americans like Marcus Garvey, and I learned about his views on what he thought black people should be doing as a whole to better themselves and to really actually be equal in this society, in American society, and just learn different views. Heard about Malcolm X, Martin Luther King, black people that a lot of people have already heard about, but then others that their story hasn't been told. So I just got to hear about a lot of different prominent black people, and they shed light on a lot of different points of views for me.
It's funny that you say Marcus Garvey because we're actually learning about him now in my African American history class, and it's like if it wasn't for that class, I wouldn't know who he was.
Really?
So could you elaborate more on who Louis Farrakhan was and what kind of things he did?
The leader of the Nation of Islam, or is the leader of the Nation of Islam. He spoke about Allah's plan because he worships Allah. He spoke about Allah's plan for the black people and for people in general, and where black people stood in that plan, and what black people need to do as a whole to see that plan through, and just to live the most fulfilling life that they can.
So, I mean, I don't know, it just seems like this movement was something very powerful, very inspirational for African Americans. It definitely had a strong impact. And that's really cool that you got to be a part of that.
It was. And I thank you for having me for this interview.